So in Learning Suite, we're going to start with a download. What download are we starting with? From the schedule. We're actually going to pick up where we left off way earlier in the semester. Do you remember when we had this exercise where we were looking at census data? We had this hideous data that came from the Census Bureau, and we made a tool that would let you pick a county, and it would display all the information just for that county. You could compare counties. That's where we're picking up. So I've just put that very same one that I uploaded at the end of class that day on today's day for us to download. So that is going to be the item that we start with. And our goal today is to work with charts, to get familiar working with chart objects. It turns out that, it's one of the powerful things in Excel is its ability to do these charts. And I don't think I've opened it yet. Control J. Charta. And so we're going to see how to automate them today. And you might think, hey, charts, no big deal. I'll record myself doing some charts, and then I can just figure it out. Oh, no. There are some really weird things about charts that you'd be glad you heard about today. I remember the first time I was trying to learn how to automate charts in Excel. It was in the days of Excel 2007. I recorded myself doing a chart. It didn't record anything. It's like, we didn't quite get around to the macro recorder figuring out charts. And so it literally did nothing. Like, here's my procedure, nothing. Wow, this code really is simple. This is a very nice code. Fortunately, starting in 2010, they had good code that was recorded when you record a chart. Okay, so that's what we're going to do today. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of some of this. Actually, I got a clear button. Get rid of all this data. I'm going to put in some charts. That's a really wide scroll bar. Don't want to miss it there. I'm going to go ahead and put some in from Utah. So let's put in Salt Lake. Oh, I'm not there yet. Salt Lake. Let's put in Utah County. Utah County. Let's put in Davis County. Just have some ones that I have a general feeling for. And then let's also put in, let's pay San Pete County. All right, we've got 4 in here. So if I'm going to make a chart here, here's the approach. I am going to select the data that I want. I'm going to select these headers. How do I select a discontiguous range like this? What key do I have to hold down to do that? Control, that's right. Select the first one that I want. Release, hold the control key down, select the second one, and I've got both of those selected. All right, so now I'm just going to insert a chart. You don't really have to do this. If you're familiar with charts, you don't have to do this along with, we're about to record it together. So I want to go through it once, then we'll record it together. So I'm just going to choose this first chart, this column chart. That's a pretty good looking chart. How are we doing on size up there? I don't really want to go much smaller, but so there's the chart, and looks pretty good. What's the one thing I might want to add to this chart? Yeah, I probably want the title. I'm probably going to want this text, whatever's here, to go into the title. So we'll take a look at that here in just a minute. But that's the process. So we're going to select what we want to select, and then we'll record ourselves selecting it, and then we'll go ahead and build the chart. So let's go ahead and record. So on my developer tab, record macro 2. I'm going to call this one build a chart. And let's see, we're making a chart. I'll put a shortcut C of Control C. Control C? That's probably a bad idea. Let's do Control Shift C, capital C. Okay, record myself doing this, and we're going to go through that process. Just highlight the data, create the chart, and stop recording. So highlight some row of data here, get the title, insert the very first chart type, the column chart, and regular column chart here. Beautiful. And stop recording. Almost stopped recording on this. Stop recording. All right, let's take a look at the code that we just generated. Oh, I got a problem. I got three modules. Module 1, this is the one that we used when we were creating all of our data to compare stuff from counties. I think I'm going to go ahead and rename this module. So here's module 1. I've double-clicked it, so it's the one that's open. I'm going to select it and say, I'll just down here in the properties, if it's not showing, view properties. I'm just going to change that to mod compare. What's module 2? Module 2 looks like something I recorded. I'm going to get rid of module 2, remove module 2, want to export it? No. You almost think they're saying, are you sure you want to do this? Yes. It's going to ask you where you want to save it. Don't save it. Just say no. Get rid of it. It won't hurt you to leave it in there. I just want to get down to just the modules I'm working with. In this module 3, I'm going to name mod, what are we doing? Charts. So mod chart. And this should have my code that we just recorded. So we'll zoom in here. Not quite sure why those pluses are there, but they went away, so that's good. Okay, so let's take a look at it. We're selecting a discontiguous range. We're activating a particular cell. We probably don't need that line. And then here's where the magic happens. We're going to add this chart. So we're going to notice first that on the active sheet, there's a shapes collection. Strangely enough, the shapes collection has the add chart method, or add chart 2. If you're in Excel 2010, you probably have add chart. Anyone on 2010 in this class? A couple of you here? So this should work for you okay. It's a little bit different, but as we modify, it'll work for you. I think you have more arguments in your add chart. Is that right? Maybe, maybe not. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get ourselves kind of going up to this point. This is going to be a little bit tricky, getting this particular range selected. So let me collapse some of these comments out of here. I guess I don't really need the build chart. Keyboard shortcut might be nice. All right, let's declare a couple of variables. Let me dim, we're going to have to figure out which row we want to build the chart data for. So let me dim row as a long integer. All right, so how is the user going to communicate to us which row they want to build the chart for? Why don't we just have them select the row? Look, you select the row, press Control-Shift-C, it'll build a chart for that data. So we'll figure out what row do we want? Well, we want row to be equal to wherever the active cell is. Row equals active cell.row. So far, so good. All right. We're going to need to know, what else do we need to know to figure out where to build this data, where to build the chart, what to highlight? What else do we have to know? We now know the row they want. How many columns are displayed here? All right. Well, we've done things similar to this before, so we won't spend a whole lot of time on this. I'm going to create a variable called last call. Dim last call as an integer. Last call equals. All right, so I'm going to look, I'm just going to come to the very far right. Guess we better start off by making sure we've got a particular sheet active. What's the name of this sheet? Is it called compare? Let's make sure that's our active sheet. Sheets compare dots activate. All right, so now the active cell will come off of the compare sheets. Last call now is going to equal, we're going to look at the cells. Which cell do we want? Row number 1. Column number, very last column. So columns.count. From there, we want to say end, XL to left, and then we want to know the column of that. So start all the way at the rightmost column, come back until we bump into some data. That's the cell that is the last column. So far, so good. We've done that a few times. That should give us what we need to get this figured out. Now, a couple of approaches that we could do. We've got to get to a range that is that discontiguous range. We could formulate a string just like this. And in fact, as long as my column letters are from A to Z, that's not too tough. But as soon as I have to start dealing with a column that's like AA, this gets ugly. So rather than deal this with trying to figure out the string that would build this, we're just going to build a discontiguous range that will take care of that for us. And so I'll declare a variable to hold that called RNG as a range. And we will say set RNG equal to something. RN, I'm surprised you didn't let me do that one because that's a reserved word, RNG. Thank you. So now I'm going to set RNG equal to, let's start, rather than trying to think of one statement that will do the whole discontiguous range, let's start with just that top range. That's going to be this 2 rows and however many columns we have, just to do this one. This one's always going to start in B1. And it's always going to end on row 2, whatever last call is. So this shouldn't be too bad. So let's set range equal to range. And we're going to specify, we're going to do the form of the range method that allows us to specify 2 different ranges. First range, easy. Cells, row number 1, column number 2. Or if you prefer, column number B. And the end one is going to be cells, row number 2, column number what? Last call. Okay, so at this point, I've got range equal to just the top block of data that I'm after. Well, I'm going to have something similar. I'm going to duplicate this line. We're kind of going a roundabout way to get to where I'm trying to get, but I want to show it this way. So I'm going to have something similar for the bottom. It's going to be cells, row number, row, column number 1, column number 2, and it's going to end on row number, row, column number, last call. So I've got 2 different range definitions. I'm just replacing one with the other, so I'm not there yet. But there is a way that I can take multiple references to a range and say I want to build one range out of that that is discontiguous. What we're doing here is we're saying I want to build a contiguous range that starts here and ends here. There's another way for me to say, well, listen, I've got 2 different ranges here. I want to build them into one range, but leave them discontiguous. Instead of merging all the cells between them, just say, oh, that's part of the range, this is part of the range, that's part of the range, another one's part of the range, and so forth. That's called the union statement. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to say, I want the union. Oh my heavens. I can put up to 30 ranges here in my union. You can union 30 different ranges together. I don't want to do 30. I just want that first one, comma, and then I'll highlight down. I'll just come and bring in my second one. I don't really need to set range equals on this one. So comma, and then an ending parenthesis at the end. Ooh, that's kind of an ugly line. So range is going to be the union of this first range, which is the top block, the labels, and this second range, which I've defined as the one that has the data. All right, so now instead of here, what do I put to select that range? What do I put? Just RNG. And I'm going to put a breakpoint here, and I'm just going to run my code to there and make sure that it highlights properly. So let's take a look. Right here, Control-Shift-C, and we'll go back. Yeah, looks like it highlighted just what we're after. Beautiful. I'm going to delete this chart. Try it again, highlight a different row, Control-Shift-C, Control-Shift, oh, I think I'm in break mode. Yeah, in break mode, so I have to stop this. Try it one more time, Control-Shift-C, and yeah, selected it again, beautiful. Okay, so far so good. How are we doing, folks? Anyone need help? Question?
Which line of code is telling you to select the row, the lower row of data, not the columns, the lower?
So here's the part that tells it we're interested in that lower row of data.
This is like, so row is, oh, so you're just doing that. So
That's right. We're figuring we want to the way we're saying the way that we're trying to figure out which row we want to go with is, hey user, you put the active cell on the row you want to chart, and then press Control-Shift-C. We'll build the chart. Okay. So yeah, so that's we set row here, and then we use row in defining this particular part of the range. All right. If you're not with me, you're against me. If you're not caught up here, now's the time. We got Cameron over there. He's just finished his latte or his chocolate milk, and he's ready to help you. Okay. Okay, this next part is the hard part. So I'm going to stop my code. Stop. This line is a line that is going to make our head hurt. So let's just take a look me highlight part of this, and let's talk about what we can know because of what comes after it. So, listen, we got some active sheet. We refer to the shapes collection. We're calling this add chart method. That's what's actually adding the chart. It says it's going to be chart type number 201. I think that's a column chart. That means column chart. Excel column clustered, and then it's going to be clustered columns is the kind of column chart it is. Okay, but now we learn something by this dot select that comes after it. So what does this dot select tell us? What can we infer about what happens up to this point because of this dot select? So whatever happens before this must refer to an object. So that's the part that's important to get here, is that when I call add chart, it builds the chart. It puts it on the sheet. It makes it visible. It does a lot of stuff. And then it says, hey, I just made something, and it hands me back the object reference to that thing. That's what allows me to say dot select on that. So whatever this object evaluates to, it will evaluate to the object that was just created. We can then select it. Now here's the trick. It's actually creating two different objects. Probably creating more than that because charts are complex. They have objects inside of objects inside of objects. But when we build a chart, that chart can actually live in one of two places. Where can that chart live? What's the possibility for a chart to be? It could be where? It could be on a worksheet, or it could be on a chart sheet. Yeah, it can just be a chart that takes up a whole tab by itself, or it can be embedded into another chart. For that reason, the chart object itself doesn't know anything about where it's positioned. It doesn't know how wide it is or how tall it is. It doesn't know. All a chart object knows is I've got to fill up whatever container I'm put in. And so if I get put into a chart sheet, it goes great. Just fill up the whole sheet. But it's got to fill up all of something. And so what is it filling up when we put it onto a worksheet? It doesn't fill up the whole worksheet. What is it filling up? And here's the clue. What collection are we calling the add chart method of? It's a shapes collection. The shapes collection has a method called add chart. It does create a chart, but what else does it create? It creates a shape. And so when I create the chart this way, it creates a shape. It puts a chart into the shape. That chart goes, I'm inside something. Make myself as big as I can possibly be. It hits the edge of that shape and it stops. So if I want to change the size of a chart, what do I have to change? The shape. I got to manipulate. If I want to change size or position, I don't touch the chart at all. I touch the shape. If I want to change something about the way the chart looks, change the title, change the axes, change the color, that's manipulating the chart. So you got to realize there's these two different things that you got to manipulate and think about. So now here's the question. What type do you think we're returning here? Do you think it's returning a reference to the chart object or the shape object? Which one? It says shapes here, it says chart here. It turns out it's going to return a reference to the shape. So what we're going to do, just to hopefully to try to make this really clear that we've got these two different important objects to work with, I'm going to create two different object variables up here. I'm going to dim SHP as a shape, and I'm going to dim chart, CHRT, as a chart. Now remember, these are just object variables. It's a variable that's going to have enough memory to refer to some object somewhere. The object gets created in memory. I just want to hook up these variables to that object so I can refer to them conveniently. I do not want to select the object. So I'm not going to select it. But because this returns a reference to the shape that was just created, I can capture that by, instead of saying select, saying set SHP equal to that create method. So now, when I look at this line, it's going to add this chart and it's going to add the shape that holds the chart. It will return a reference to that shape that was just created, and I will capture that reference right here. From here on in, I could say shape.top equals some new number, and it will move that shape to a new location. I'm just saying, hey, whatever chart you've created, let me hook up this variable to it so I can refer to it. We've done this several times in class so far, and I know it's kind of a step to kind of get what's going on. How many of you are going, yeah, I'm totally comfortable with this shape object? 2. And some of those hands were tentative. All right, so just stick with us on this. So that's going to give us the shape. We're going to have to manipulate the shape quite a bit. But now that shape contains a chart. So let's get to the chart as well. So I'm going to set my chart object, CHRT, equal to SHP, the shape that it returned. That shape is holding a chart, and it has a property called chart. So now we've added the chart, and we have a reference to the shape and a reference to the chart. So now if I want to change some property of the chart, I just say CHRT dot property name equals something. I want to change the shape, SHP dot whatever property gets its new value. Okay, only one more line here to go. What we're doing is we're setting the source data for this. Now, do I even have an active chart anymore? Yeah, I'm no longer selecting that shape. There is no active chart. So what do I put here instead of active chart? CHRT, that's the chart that I just connected up to. Set source data, source equals, what do you think? Range, RNG. It's the range that we just declared. We went through all this work to set up the range that we're interested in. And so now we're going to both select that range, and we're going to use that to set the source of the data for the chart. We've added a lot of lines here, but, well, we're going to do some more complex things here. But so far, so good. We should be able to run this and have it create the chart. Here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to do one more little trick here. And that is, after I've created that chart, I just want to select the next row down. This is more just convenience for me. So as I create multiple charts, I don't have to click on the next row down to get a different chart. So I'm going to say cells, row number, row plus 1, column number 1, dot select. So in other words, after I've made that chart, select the next row down, so I'm ready to make the next chart. Go ahead.
I just have a general question.
Yes.
What?
Well, I am the VBA general. So I'm a 5-star VBA general, so ask away.
What methods are there? What methods are there besides select? What other methods are employed?
Sure. Question is, what other methods do I have to choose from? Well, let's take a look. So for a range, RNG dot, when I look at the IntelliSense help, any of these that have the little green block flying through the air are the methods. So add comments a method, allocate changes. I don't know what allocate changes does.
What do we use though? Like I've used activate.
Well, here's one, auto fit.
Have I ever used auto fit?
Yeah, because in fact, in this very example that we're working on, if we go back to our prior mod compare, we had to auto fit the data after we put it in. So here's that column. Now that we put that data in there, we want it to fit to the data that's there. So that's one that we've used. Let's go back, see what else there is to choose from. Auto fit. Well, other method that we've used was the add chart to when we just did. Clear, I think we've used. It just clears the range, whatever's in the range. We've never checked spelling. That would take a long time for me. My spelling's pretty bad. Clear comments, clear formats, clear notes. Copy, we've done copy. That's a method. Delete, we've done delete, not of cells, but like of columns and such. I think we've done. So those are the methods you've got to choose from. All right, well, let's give this a shot now. So now this should go through, create the chart, allow me to set the source data, and then move me down. So I should be able to create several charts as I go now. So Control-Shift-C, I'm on line 10, Control-Shift-C, got a breakpoint, I need to close that breakpoint. That was neat. Let's try that again. Control-Shift-C, there we go. So I've got my first one here, move it somewhere else, Control-Shift-C. Make another one, and another one, and another one. And they're just going right on top of each other, but we've got all these charts now. It's a problem when you make a macro to create charts, you make more charts than you really need. Okay. Questions on the code? Zoom into this part right here. Yeah, it's a long, complex row. Let me highlight the first argument. So that's the first range, that's the labels. Then after the comma, we've got the second range, which is the data. That's comma. Yeah, so that's the two different arguments for union. Let me go ahead and pause right there, and we'll make sure you guys are up and running. All right. So right here, range B1 activate, that's left over from the recording. I need to get rid of that. It's really not doing anything for us. I'm selecting this range. Oh, in fact, it's probably doing all kinds of bad things. Selecting that range and then activating this. Oh, that's actually inside the range that's selected, and so it's just making that the active cell. It doesn't need to be active for anything. I'll get rid of that line. Wasn't stopping the code from running. It was just activating a particular cell in the selection. And again, that's just left over from the recording. It's not part of what we need to have here to make it work. Okay, well, we have a problem, and that is I got way too many charts. So what I'd like to do next is I would like to give myself a procedure that just lets me say, you know what? Let's erase these charts. Get rid of all of these charts. What's that? Oh, that's when I was commenting there. So I'm going to do that as a separate sub-procedure. It turns out that deleting all the objects in a collection of objects is a little bit of a problem. Let's go through it. We'll talk ourselves through it, and you'll think, oh, that looks perfect. And then it won't work, and we'll talk about why it doesn't work. So let's take a look. Sub, delete charts. So I've got, well, here's the first problem, is that there's no just, well, there may be a collection of just my chart objects. Let me just take a look right here. We're going to delete the charts off the active sheet. Active sheet dot, like a little IntelliSense help here, so let me dim S as a worksheet. Set S equal to active sheet. S dot, now I get some help here. Yeah, so there's a chart objects collection. This should have, chart objects should have, it's a collection of all the charts in my sheet. All the charts on this sheet. So let's just take a look at this. Just watch this part. Don't do this along with me. I'm just going to come to my immediate window, and let's just probe this for a bit. Chart objects, let's see, I'm going to have to say active sheet.chartObjects dot count. Active, I've got 7 of them. Let me look at one of them, and let me ask for the type name. What is it? What do you think? You think it's a chart or a shape? It's a collection of chart objects. You think it's a chart or a shape? It's a chart object. Well, that makes sense. Now here's what I'm curious to know. Can I say active sheet chart objects 1, does it have a delete method? I'm guessing it doesn't. Oh, it does. Looks like it worked okay. Let's just count how many chart objects we have. This might be an easier way to do it than I did it in the last class. ActiveSheet.ChartObjects.count. If that actually deleted it, we're going to have 6. Seems like it must have. One, two, three, four, five, 6. Okay, very good. All right, so let's delete charts. Let's declare a variable x, dim x as an integer. For x equals 1, 2, x equals 1, 2, s dot chart objects dot count. And in fact, chart objects is a collection, so it starts at 0 and it ends at its count. You remember when we were working with list boxes, the list and list boxes, we had to go, did I say it starts at 0? It's a collection. It starts at 1 and ends at its count. If it was an array, it would start at 0, but it's a collection. It starts at 1. So we don't have to worry about subtracting 1 off the top. All right, so let's just go through and delete this. s.chartObjects sub x dot delete. That should do it, right?
Does it not reset the number every time you delete one? After you delete one, will the count change to 6?
Ah,
And then
good
will
question.
that do a subscript out of range?
Let's take a look at the problem. So yes, it will change the count. However, we don't actually look in a for loop. We don't evaluate this except once. So when we first hit this loop, we're going to start and say, all right, we're going to take x from 1 to 6. And it doesn't look at that again. It's just going to keep that around. But let's step through it and see what happens. I'll put a breakpoint here. I'll run this code, and we'll execute. So let's see. Come back here and see if we can. I'm not sure which my first chart is to disappear. We'll step through this. You can delete that one. Hard to tell if one disappeared or not. Go again. Ah, there was one here. It's gone now. So far, so good. Ah, that one that was there is gone. And now, another one's gone wherever it was. Is it? Or do we have an error? Oh, here we go. We have an error. Chart objects failed. So let's take a look. Debug this. So what's going on here? Right now, x is, let's ask what x is. Question mark x. Number 4. How many chart objects do we have? Yeah, we've deleted already some of them. And so there's now only 3, and I'm saying to look at the 4th one. The problem is with this loop was that we said, go from 1 to 6. So great, we'll go from 1 to 6. I've got the whole collection of charts here, and as I delete one off, then the rest of them slide into that position. I delete the next one, it slides in that position. So I delete number 1, and what was number 2 becomes number 1, and then what do? I go and delete number 2. So I've skipped over that one that's now number 1. Does that make sense? So when you're deleting the objects in a collection, that's a problem that we've got to deal with. There's a couple ways around it. Here's one. You stop my code here. One is to say, well, look, instead of going that way, let's do this. Let's go from the count to 1, but go backwards. Step -1. So now, if I'm going to delete the 6th one, I delete it. Nothing slides into its place. It's just there. Next time to loop, I delete the 5th, then the 4th, and the 3rd, and that will take care of it just fine. So now let me go ahead and run this, make sure that it runs through just fine, and it's deleted off the rest of those charts. Go ahead with the question. Ah, that's another solution. So one would be to come here and say, we just want to execute that many times and just delete the first one each time. That would do the trick as well. This will only work if I really am deleting them all. If in my situation I have to look at each one and decide, should this one be deleted, and then either delete it or not, this will be a problem. Right? Because I'll look at that first one and go, oh no, I shouldn't delete it. Then I'd have to move and say, okay, now I'm working on the second one, so that'll be a little more complex. But in this case, we're trying to delete them all, and so this way works as well. It's the other common way to do it. But since we're going backwards, I'm going to go ahead and leave this as x. Question?
Could you just reset x to like 0?
Oh yeah, that's kind of a cheaty way to do it here. We could just come here and say x equals 0. What's next going to do? Before we have this step -1, it'll add 1 onto it. So that would be exact. That would execute exactly the same way as just putting a 1 here. You know, you're getting no benefit out of that being a variable at all. But it would also accomplish the thing. This wasn't so much about deleting objects in collections. It's a little side note. It's because I needed some way to delete all those charts that we created. So we've deleted those charts. Question?
Actually, I tried putting it parentheses, just like delete, and then it
There's a delete method of the collection? I believe you. Let me just see it. I'd never even tried that. I never even knew that. Oh my heavens. Control-Shift-C. Put a few charts on here. Okay, so what you're saying is that the chart objects itself has a delete method. Oh, look at that. I could have saved the last 10 minutes.
But I learned a lot.
I'm glad you learned a lot. Not all those collections are going to have a delete method. Let's move on then. Okay. So here's the next thing that I want to do. So now, oh, yeah, we still have, there's one defective thing about these charts. What is it? Yeah. Once I create that second, here, actually I think I've moved down one. So it's actually this one right here that I'm on. I'd like to be able to change that title. Now, those of you who are on Excel 2010, you don't even have a title. The add chart method does not put a title on, add chart 2 does. You don't have add chart 2 as part of the language. So we're going to start off by saying, hey, let's make sure there's a title on the chart, and then we're going to go ahead and decide what that title is going to be. Okay, so after we've created the chart, yeah, just trying to find where I wanted to be, then we'll zoom in. Okay, so here we're building the chart, and then we're setting the source of it, so this thing is now created. Now what I'd like to do is set the title. So step one is to make sure the chart has a title. So that's a property of the chart, so I'm going to use my chart object. That's why I connected up my chart variable to this chart object. So chrt dot has title equals true. That's how you put a title on. That seems like a really weird way to put a title onto a chart. Now, those of you who already are on 2013, 2016, it's already true for you. The add chart 2 method puts a title on it. But if this is running in 2017, it won't have that. And so we've got to set that there. Now we've got to actually set the chart title, no problem. chrt.title. There's no title. It has a title, but how do you change the title? Well, it's the first time I looked for the chart title property, the title of a chart. It took about a half hour to find it. You know, I thought, what's it going to be called? Title? That was it. Maybe it's just called text. There's no text. The only T is tab. It wasn't tab. So how are you going to find it? Google? First time I was searching for it was so new, Google wasn't even talking about it. So here's what you're going to do, folks. Anytime you start working with a new object, you're, okay, I'm working with charts. You're going to take the 3 minutes that it takes to say, it's probably worth the time for me to read through all of these properties and methods. I'm just going to read, I might not even be looking for anything in particular. Let me get myself familiar with this. Activate. Oh, activate. I can probably get that one. Application. No idea what that is. Actually, it's a reference to Excel. It's the application that's running the code. Apply chart template. I don't even know what a chart template is, but apparently you can apply a chart template to a chart. That's good. Apply data labels. Interesting. Auto scaling. Axes. Oh, there's a back. Did you know a chart had a back wall? I didn't know that. Bar shape. All this stuff. Chart color. Oh, look at that. Chart title. It's called chart title. Why did they call it chart title instead of just title? That seems like a really bad idea, but that's what it is. Chart title. But when you're doing this for yourself the first time, you're going to keep going. You're going to read through them all. Okay. Chart title equals. By the way, you can't do chart title equals. What you want to do is anytime you get to a new property, what should you type first? Hit a dot and see if something else comes up. Oh, chart title is an object. It's got properties of its own. Oh, look, it's a caption. Characters. Is there a value? You're going to read through it on your own, we're going to, there's text. I've never tried the caption. In fact, I've never noticed the caption before. I'm going to try caption. My guess is it'll do the same thing as the text. Text, I know would work. Dot caption equals our cells, row number, column number 1, dot value. I'm not entirely sure that's going to work, but caption kind of seems like it should work. Let's give it a shot. I'm going to come over here. Select this one, Control-Shift-C. Oh, look at that. Now I've got a chart that gives me all the information I need. This is the resident population, American Indian and Alaskan Native alone. Whatever that means in 2008. A lot more in Salt Lake than in San Pete County. Okay, good. It turns out we could have used text. Caption works as well. I've never used caption before. It's there and it works. So now I think I've got the charts built the way I want them to be. If we wanted to change the color, a little more work, we could change the color. We could set different things on the scale and whatever, but we're gonna let it be just like this. Okay, what's the next step then that we have to do? We'll make this kind of usable. I've got to put the charts somewhere else, so they're not stacking on top of each other. So here's what I'd like to do. When I create the first chart, I would like to put it right there. Oops. I want to put it right there. And the next chart, where do I want to put it? Right there. Just like to kind of let them go in. So, turns out, let's see, we've got our first chart object here. So let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and run right up to here. I'll put a breakpoint on the end sub, and I'll run this procedure. Because I've just created a new. I've created a new chart. It's right here. I'm still in break mode, and so I would like to come here and ask something about the shape that's holding that chart. Question mark shape SHP dot left 291.75. That is the left of this. So if I want that to be something more, like 391.75, I could change that to, or 400. I can move that shape. See, where is it? It's kind of somewhere in column A, middle of column A. I'm going to execute that line. It's moved it further in column A. It's moved it to 400 over here. So I got to figure out where it's going to go. Well, let me just move it to where I want it to be. I want it to be right about here. Let me ask where that is. All I want to do is copy that down. 624.25. Is that where I want these charts to go? 624? 625? That is not where I want them to go. Why not? I might have more counties. If I've got 5 counties there, it's going to go right over the top of that data. I got to figure out where this is. Fortunately, I already know the column of the last data. It's called last call. And so I just want to ask this column, the next column over, hey, what's your left dimension? Where are you? So here's what I'm going to do. Let me declare a couple of more. I'll stop this code now. Stop. After we've set the title, now let's position the chart. Okay, let me dim left as a single, and let me dim top as a single. I got to figure out top and left. So step one is going to say I'm going to figure out the left. My variable left is going to equal, now I've got to pick a particular cell. Let's pick this cell right here, this very cell, F1. Doesn't matter which cell I pick in column F, they all have the same left. It's a column, they're all lined up. So left is going to equal cells, row number 1, column number what? Last call. That's going to be the last one with data. I want the next one over, so what do? Plus 1 dot left. There we go. My variable left will be the value of the left property of that particular cell. So far, so good. My top is going to be cells, row number 3, column number, doesn't matter, dot top. Top of any cell in row number 3 will tell me the top of where I want that to go. So now I should just be able to say my shape dot top equals shape dot top equals top, and shape dot left equals left. Remember, shape is the object that's holding my chart. All right, let's go ahead and see if that will put it in the right place. I'm going to clear off my charts, delete charts, F5, zoom back out. All right, so I'm right here, hit Control-Shift-C, and hopefully that chart's going to pop right up there into F3, upper corner F3. Control-Shift-C, got an N sub here, that's fine. And let's put that chart right up there. Actually, I'm feeling a little bit crowded by it. I think I want it pushed over just a hair, just like about that far over. I feel a little more comfortable with that, so I can see that it's not covering any data. In fact, when I lay my next chart in, I probably want that same little gap between it and the next one. So let me do this. Instead of making a variable, let me make a constant. We haven't made constants very much. Const margin equals, say, 5. So now my left is going to be the left plus the margin. My top is going to be the top plus the margin. I guess I should zoom in. So now I'm just going to say I want 5 more than whatever it calculates it should be. And let me delete my charts, take off my breakpoint. Control-Shift-C. Yeah, now it puts it right up in there. I got my first one there. Now I got to figure out the second, third, and fourth. A little more work, but at least I've got it to where I'm moving the shape. Doing pretty good. Okay, so here's where we're positioning the chart. Any questions?
So will that move over as you insert new columns?
Yes, because the question is, will that move over as we insert new columns? The answer is yes, because we are calculating what the last column is up above. Above we say, hey, set the last column equal to the last column that has data, and we're using that last column variable to figure out what our left should be.
So that's for new charts. What about the old charts?
Old charts. The old charts? Oh, we take care of old charts right here. Delete charts. Get rid of them. So the idea is that we're only going to worry about positioning the charts as they come in. With a little work, we could make a procedure that says, I got a bunch of charts here. How about, maybe I created them by hand. How about making them all the same size, lining them up and putting them into a nice grid? We could do that, but in this example, we're going to position them as they come. All right, we've got the first one going. Now let's position the second one. How are we going to tell if it's the second one or not? How are we going to tell if it's the first one?
We can count the number of chart objects.
Yes. We're going to ask how many chart objects there are. If there's only, we've already added a chart by this time. If there's only one chart object, it's the first one. So let's do that. Let's say if active sheet dot chart objects dot count equals 1, then this is the first chart. That's what we do. Now, if it's a second chart, we got to do something else. If it's the second chart, having done this example a time or two, I know that we're going to be referring multiple times to that second chart, and so I want to that first chart. If this is the second or third or fourth chart, I want to know the chart that was added just before this one. So let me create a variable for that. I'm going to dim last chart. Last chart's not so good because this is really the last chart. It's the former last chart. It's the penultimate chart. I'll call it the P chart. It's the penultimate chart. Dim P chart as a chart. No, as a shape. No, let's dim it. I think we can probably dim it as a chart object. We do it as a chart object. Okay, so if I get to this point, I know there's at least one chart object already existing. There's at least one prior chart object. Okay, so I'm going to set my penultimate chart equal to chart objects, ActiveSheet.chart objects. Now, which one do I want? How do I tell it which one I want? Go ahead. Yeah, I'll just ask how many there are. I know there's more than one. I'll just take how many there are and then back it off by one. So ActiveSheet.ChartObjects.count minus 1. CHRT object, CHRT. Thank you. So now I've got a reference to that penultimate chart, the one that was there before we started adding this new one. Now, where do I want the next one to go if there was already one before? I got a chart sitting here. Where's the next one going to go? Right below it. We'll just put it right below it. So I'm going to set left equal to the left of that chart. I'm going to set top equal to what? This is a little harder. What are we going to do with top? You're thinking like you're thinking like Descartes. You're thinking about a Cartesian plane. If you go lower, the number is smaller. But we actually in Excel, to go lower, the number's bigger. It's kind of backwards. So instead of subtracting from the bottom, we're going to add to the bottom. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's start with a margin. We're going to add that on. Now we'd like to add to the bottom. So plus pchart dot bottom. No bottom. There's no bottom property. How else are we going to figure out what the bottom of that chart is? Top plus height. And actually, I think mathematically this doesn't change anything, of course, because addition is commutative, but I think I like to think of it better this way. Find the top, add on the height, add on the margin, and that is the new top. Oh, whoops. I did this mindlessly. Sorry, folks. This part here where we're calculating the top is the part that goes in the if statement. This part goes at the end of the if statement because what I'm saying is with this if statement, I'm trying to figure out what top and left should be. And then after the if statement, I want to assign that to the chart. Sorry. So I got to take what's inside this if statement, bring it down here to after the if statement. And this first block where I'm setting top and left is the one that is if it's the first chart. So as I come into this if statement, all I'm doing is I'm setting my two variables, top and left, top and left. This one's a little more complicated, but it figures out what top and left should be. And then when I'm done, I set my new shape to that top and left. This should give me now something that will generate charts just going down in a column. Pop, 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 pop. It'll be better than I was before. It's still not going to be all that desirable, but let's give it a shot. Well, let me clear off my old charts. And zoom out. All right, Control-Shift-C. There's the first one. How do you get chopped off? Because I'm zoomed in a little bit. I'm scrolled down a little bit. Bring in the next one. Putting it right there. I could do it, 5 or 6 times. And they're all just lining up right here. Now that might be just what I want if I'm working on a screen this size. Just gotta scroll up and down to see what I want. But what if I'm working on a 4K 50-inch monitor like I have in my office? It's a beautiful monitor. If you haven't come by to see it, come by sometime. And I got all this screen estate and I want to be able to see all these at once. What should I be able to do? I want this thing to go down for a while and then say, yeah, that's far enough. Let's go back up to the top. And let's start going and move over and then come down some more. Okay, move back to the top and then come down some more. Shall we do it? Does it seem hard? It's a little hard, but not too bad. We got time. Okay, so the next task is to tell it, after it goes down a certain distance, we want it to start going back up. So let's make another constant. I'll call it charts per column. Why don't we say we'll put 4. Charts per column equals 4. Okay. So now, how are we going to figure? Go ahead.
So what's the point of setting the constant equal to 5 rather than just putting a +5 on each of those lines?
Oh, yeah. So why don't we just put +5, +5, +5? Would that work? That would totally work. Well, let's decide I felt a little crowded by 5, and I want to make it 10. If I come into 10, now everywhere I'm talking about the margin, all of my margins have now just shifted. That's the whole reason that we do it. Same thing here. I'm probably going to refer to charts per column in multiple places. And if I decide, you know what, I think I want to see it 6. In fact, at some point, I might want to make it choosable by the user. And so it would need to be not a constant, but need to be a variable. Let's make it a constant now, just so we have some practice with it. Okay, so if it's the first one, we know exactly where it goes. So let's not look there to wonder how we're going to work with charts per column. Now, if it's something other than the first one, I think we can go ahead and set the chart to our prior chart. That's okay. But now we got to decide, maybe it's time to shift over. How can we tell if it's time to shift over? What mathematical operation is going to help us with that? Did someone say mod?
Yeah.
Yeah, mod. So every time, so if our count mod charts per column is 0, or if it's 1, let's say if it's 1, then we want to shift over. So let's do that. If our chart count, so chartObjects.count, if chartObjects.count mod charts per column equals 1, then we want to do something else. We want to behave the way we've done before. Okay, so what do we want to do if it's time to shift over? So we've put in these charts, and now it's time to shift over. So what do we do?
Switch left over to the chart, right?
Yeah, so that's right. So we're going to refer to the last chart, figure out how wide it is, and set our left. But how about top? What's top going to do? Right back up to the top. So top is going to behave just like the top up here does. I'm going to copy it down. So top is going to go to the top. My left now is going to be p chart, my prior chart, dot left plus my prior chart, dot width, what else? Plus the margin. We're gonna see this is a little bit weird. One more thing we'll have to do to make this work, but let's go ahead and get this going so we can see it. We're not quite there. Let me clear off my charts. Control-Shift-C. Zoom it all the way down. And let me zoom out a bit. Control-Shift-C. Control-Shift-C. Actually, it's not quite doing what I wanted it to do. Well, maybe it is. There we go. It's doing exactly what I wanted. Never mind. It's perfect. It's beautiful. Thing of beauty. So I'm building my grid out pretty well. That's pretty nice. That kind of makes me want to do it some more. And I got all this data, I might as well build the charts. Oh, I think I got ahead of it. Stop, please. Kind of surprised that it slowed down so much just because we're zoomed out. I really hope it stops sometime. Oh, there we go. So I do have quite a few of these charts all built in. Okay, let's go back and look at the code. Delete charts. Here's the magical part right here. We're asking if we are, take how many chart objects there are, mod the number of charts we want per column, and if that equals 1, it's time to shift over. Okay, one more thing that I want to talk about with regard to charts that we're not really going to integrate here. And that is, most objects don't have what I'm about to tell you, but charts do, and it's wonderful. I can take a chart, and I can export it as a graphic file. Let's just do this really quickly. We've got enough time to make one more procedure. Sub export all charts. Let me dim CO as a chart object. For each CO in ActiveSheet dot chart objects, CO dot chart dot export. The chart object is not really the chart itself. The chart object is the shape that contains the chart. And so I got to get into the chart. The collection of chart objects is just the shapes that have charts in them. So I've got a shape, I got to get to the chart, then I'm going to export it. I have to give it a file name. So this workbook .path concatenated with, just put a backslash, could say application.path separator, that's kind of long for my screen. Concatenated with my chart object's name. Concatenated with .png, comma, I got to tell it what filter to use. In other words, what kind of graphic to create. I'll make it a PNG. What this should do is should loop through all the chart objects, and one by one it should export them to a file that's the same location as my workbook is, but the name is going to be whatever the name of the chart object is with a .png after. That's a lot of charts on my current one. I'm going to clear those charts off so I don't make that many files. I'm going to add a few more charts here. Control Home, Windows minus, zoom out. Okay, I've made 3 charts here. What I'd like to do now is I would just like to export. This is the loop. It's going to loop through all my chart objects, refer to the chart and export it. And that should, in my downloads window, I know how to get to my computer. This PC. Downloads. Don't take so long to get there. If I knew the names of them, we would just open them directly. It says it's done. Getting kind of low on disk space. It's time to delete some of these old videos, I think. Oh, there we go. There they are. There's those charts. It's chart 8,215. I made quite a few charts, apparently. But now I should be able to open those, and they should be those charts. You want this chart to be bigger, you make the chart bigger on your Excel. Whatever size it is in Excel, that's the image that it creates. And so it can be very helpful to say, you know what, I need these charts somewhere else, export them all, and then you've got those files, and then you can put them in a PowerPoint, or you can put them in a Word document or whatever. Okay, that is working with charts. What questions do you have? All right, I'll post the video. Thanks for coming. Class dismissed.